Hello, and thank you for taking a listen to this week's episode of Secure Insights with NDK Cyber. As many of you know, NDK Cyber, first and foremost, is a cybersecurity recruitment company. We help organizations hire on a global scale, whether it's niche skill sets, tricky locations, scaling up quickly in vendor and services, or indeed end users. We tackle everything in that cyber space. Now, the podcast was created really to shine a light on certain areas that are being talked about, that maybe aren't being talked about enough, companies that are doing very well, cool technology that's coming through, and really trying to stay right in the limelight of what's going on in the cybersecurity industry at the moment. And this week, very excited to be joined by Abhi Sharma. Abhi Sharma is the co-founder and CEO of Relyance AI. You'll learn more through the episode, but Reliance AI effectively look at the whole world of data security posture management with the new age of AI coming through. We look at are the uh, are the traditional ways of addressing data security, are they sort of keeping up or aren't they? How we can complement that, the ways we need to look at data security posture management moving forward. Abby's got a couple of great terms around governance gloom and data flow darkness that I'm excited to share, along with something that he calls the trust equation, which I think is particularly interesting towards the end of the episode. So really excited to share this one. Open to feedback as always. Hope you enjoy and speak soon. And we're live. Well, Abby, thank you so much for jumping on today. I really appreciate it. I know you're slammed. Now, I would have done you an intro there. The listeners would have heard. It probably hasn't done it justice. So, are you okay to give us a quick snapshot of, I guess, your background and where you're at?
Absolutely. So, firstly, my name is Abhi Sharma. I'm the founder and CEO of Relyance AI. A little background about myself. I guess, basically the traditional cliched machine learning software engineer to founder journey in a nutshell. This is my second startup and also the most interesting and unique, and hopefully the most important project I've worked on in my life. I am here based in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and building to help protect the world with AI and data governance as we scale our business.
Awesome. Great. Well, and what we can do after the podcast as well, we can put links in the show notes and everything else as well to paint a further picture if needed. But you mentioned there around this is one of the most important projects you've been on and the most important. So to that end, where are we at in this whole data security posture management space and how Reliance knits into that, where you're at with it? What's your sort of take on that at the moment?
Yeah, I think DSPM or data security posture, where I would say we're in the peak hype cycle for the V1 of data security posture management. And what that essentially means is that people have started to realize, especially because of regulations and AI, that the data layer is the most crucial, critical attack vector and also your biggest asset, especially because of AI. And so I think we are at a spot where DSPM as a category is an accepted term and acronym in data security practitioners. But in terms of the actual reality on the ground, it's still fundamentally still deeply rooted in visibility or compliance checkbox, or maybe just FOMO on making sure that our org is doing AI. So let's put some data security. So I would say the reason I called it peak hype cycle for V1 is because it's still deeply rooted just in visibility. Where are our crown jewels and where's the sensitive data? I do think that because of the push and impetus in AI adoption, we're also starting to get out of that hype cycle where people and CISOs and data security practitioners are realizing that discovery is great, but that's not good enough. So, like DSPM today is good at finding your S3 buckets that have sensitive data, but very bad at telling you why it matters or where it came from, on where is it going. But I think we're kind of coming off of that hype cycle where DSPM is now more thought of a feature rather than a category. And that's where I think more areas around data flow, AI governance, understanding and simulating data breaches is going to be more important than just categorizing and classifying data.
And the point you mentioned there around, so we're very good at identifying maybe sensitive data within an S3 bucket, but the next step, what did you mention that next step was there, sorry?
Yeah, so it's think about it this way, which is I think if I tell you that, hey James, you have 500 S3 buckets that have personal sensitive data and they need protection, that's useful. And I think that's very important. But in the world of AI, data is not inert, which means that the quality, the distribution, the amount, the frequency changes software behavior. And that never happened before in the world of software at all. So, therefore, the questions that matter is why do I have the data in there? Where did it come from? Where is it going? What are we doing with it? And should we have this data for this purpose we are actually using it for? And you cannot answer those questions if you're just classifying data in static assets because you can't answer anything about flow. I'm just connecting to a system and I'm saying, oh, there is, SSN or blood group here. But why? Where did it come from? And that visibility is becoming more and more important. And I don't think that it would have been so important in the industry unless AI came along. But now I think that changes the game on classification becomes table stakes or commodity as a feature. And it's all about what can you do with the classification? What can you prevent? And how does it overlay against my controls? And that's what's becoming important now.
Yeah, understood. I keep hearing this. I don't know whether it's true. I'd like to think it is, but the story that keeps coming up is that organization X implemented all the AI features, employee put their own name into the AI feature, and it came up that they were on a redundancy list. So that's the kind of like, I don't know, the use case that's floating around LinkedIn. It's in a lot of interviews and things like that. But I guess to your point, that's a very sort of, I guess, high level example of the dangers that AI can bring. And with you talk a lot around data flow darkness.
Mhm.
Is that what you're getting at here around the whole, we've got this data here, but how did it get there? What do we do with it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because there is some idea when it comes to protecting your data, securing your data, leveraging your data, there is still a huge amount of what I would call governance gloom or data flow darkness. And why does that exist? Because what's happening is you have classification in one tool, your controls are in another tool, and everybody knows like compliance is not security, but we still do it. Your contracts are commitments to your customers in another tool, your logs are in Datadog, or your cloud security infrastructure issues are in another CSPM tool. And if you look at all of these four pieces, what you start to realize that people appreciate that governance is important, but doing governance is hard because you have pieces of the puzzles in six different places that don't necessarily seamlessly talk to each other. And I think it was okay in the past to have this because you moved at a different frequency of change and software and human behavior was probably a little bit more predictable. But the moment you inject AI in the equation where you're mostly doing non-deterministic actions, the why is more important than just the what. And so it flips the lens from how do you reason about all of these 50 things in five places in one single view. And I think that's what we are getting at with data flow darkness or governance gloom, which is can we have a singular lens that maps all data journeys from code to production and then run breach simulations, then sprinkle policies and controls over that and see where your gaps are, right? If you can um, map all data journeys like people map user journeys in a product and reason about it, then everything kind of starts to come together in a singularity type experience where you can actually proactively enforce data security or controls or monitor deviations and drifts. And if it's in 50 places or five tools, you just can't do it. And that's, I think, the biggest gap that we see and people still struggle with, even if they have three or four tools. Or like, for example, in data security, the typical thing that everybody does is, oh, we're worried about this thing, let's put a proxy in front of it that will monitor everything, and then the proxy will figure out. The problem is there's so much noise. Then it's like you don't care about all the logs and traffic. You care about specific logs and specific traffic under specific conditions of control violations. But then if all these things live in 50 places, how do you reason about it? And I think that's where at least our point of view and the way we are building is, how do we turn that gloom into like an 80% reduction in manual labor, and you just get like a clear remediation plan on what you should do.
Mm. And to get to that clear remediation plan, is that as simple as bringing in a tool? I mean, not intending to turn this into a super plug session here, but it's important and it's very relevant to talk about. So is it a tool fix, or is it a people or a process problem? How do we go
I think
about
it's
correcting that?
very much a tool problem, and a technology problem. I think if you look at data security and even compliance and governance, we have done a lot in process and people. There's obviously more to be done, but those are not the areas in which you can fix. Yes, maybe there's some cultural changes you should make, and I'm all for it. But the fundamental problem is the tooling, because the tooling has not evolved with the change and the rate of change in AI in software development lifecycle. And you can't quite bring, basically a knife to a gunfight. Like you're just always going to lose. And that's what's happening in this industry. So we certainly believe that we have to rethink data security tooling from the bottoms up with a AI first point of view. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you just slap the word agentic in front of everything you have done before. What that essentially means is you rethink um, the fundamental paradigms of visibility itself. So, a specific example is, in the industry of data security, people have always understood that I need to figure out where my personal and sensitive data is. And so what did people do? They said, well, let's look at connect to all these things and classify data. But when you have large amount of data, it's painful, hard to classify, horrible, and then you just still don't have the full visibility. So when I say you have to be AI first, is basically when you think about visibility, you start to think bottoms up and reason about, well, what kind of visibility is going to be important? And you quickly realize that you not only need to see data at rest and classification, but you need to see its entire journey on how it got there, because we can no longer care about protection from an input and an output standpoint, whether it's AI, whether it's human behavior, whether it's identity. Because if just imagine for a second, if we truly materialize the AI dream that everybody's talking about, then what's flowing between multiple agents is prompts, or randomly dynamically created prompts and text. So, and it might have some business data associated with it, but there could be a chain of such non-deterministic prompts that lead to a particular outcome that you just cannot monitor by just looking at one piece of the puzzle and seeing the input and output there and controlling that, because you don't even know how the prompts transform, because data is changing and it's affecting software behavior. And so bubbling this back up to the point I was trying to make is, thinking about the tooling bottoms up means that when you think about data classification in an AI native world, you think about data journeys along with it. And that's what means to have better visibility than AI models can reason about it in a way AI models are using it. And I think that is what is missing, or people are forgetting in the industry, is mostly people are saying, well, we used to do XYZ, let's do the same thing. And then now let's slap an LLM in front of it. Well, its quality and remediation is not going to be exponentially better because you're still doing the same old thing. And I think that's the gap.
It kind of takes me back a little bit to I've been doing this a little while now, and it's when kind of application security or product security roles first came through, and it was sort of like we've got all this code, we're now finding all of the gaps in it, we need to sort of remediate it, which then transferred into more of look, we're going to have the application security team work with the developers whilst they're developing everything, rather than sort of, we've done it, okay, make it secure. Am I on the right lines there? And please say if I'm not.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's about capturing the changes of the ramification of a code change and reasoning about its second order, third order effects as soon as it's done. And therefore, the point of view we take is we provide X-ray vision into entire data journeys from code to runtime to the cloud. So then you can reason about the ramifications of what did that code change happen in terms of across the industry, or if you chose a vendor and connected something else across your organization. And that's super important, which is the same as AppSec example that you gave, which is you build stuff and then you basically go ahead and try to secure it. And it's always painful and doesn't work. And the more important point to realize is that it's not a problem you can solve, especially with data now. You can solve with people and processes because the amount of variability is so high. You kind of need a machine to be reasoning about this consistently and reasoning about the entire journey and flow. Because what people don't realize is that here's a concrete example, actually. We have, without naming the company, we have a customer. And one of the issues they had long term was uh, their AI models in production decided to behave slightly differently. And there was a whole, research on why it's doing this, why is the behavior changing? And turns out nobody has changed anything. The code wasn't changed. They did not do any push to production. There was literally no change in the life cycle. And people are like, why the hell is it behaving differently? And after a ton of debugging for many weeks, they realized the only change was the AI model was using something known as the RAG architecture, which means it references a data set, um, which is a corpus of data before making a production. Just like OpenAI reads the web before giving you an answer, you can have proprietary data that's looked up before the model gives you an answer. And the update frequency of that proprietary data set was updated from once a day to thrice a day. So now the data is the same, the quality is the same, the consistency is same, but the act of updating more frequently made the model think that it needs to be more aggressive in its predictions, and therefore it led to a change in behavior. Now, there is no amount of traditional data security thinking and monitoring you can do that can check this problem. And this is my idea or my whole point, which is data classification and data security posture management is not a static point in analysis of what data you have. It's a continuous CT scan or X-ray vision of the movement of data because your behavior of software now depends on it.
And this is what you referred to as the whole data journeys piece.
Absolutely.
Got it. Wow. Okay. And so what's the fix then? It's just having a much more dynamic view of what your data is doing as opposed to setting and forgetting type thing.
Yeah, I think the fix really is you have to think differently. And the think differently is you have to fundamentally believe in three things. One, that data is no longer inert, it is alive and it changes behavior. Second, software is inherently non-deterministic, or you can say software now has agency, which means it makes its own decision. And third, therefore, trust and governance are foundational pieces, not for compliance, not for security, but for predictability, which determines your customer outcomes and experiences. And of course, security and compliance is important. So once you kind of fundamentally understand that, you quickly reason bottoms up from there to really realize that the way to solve for this is you need consistent X-ray vision about an element level, data type level flow of changes in behavior from code to runtime. So when things run, and also when they get stored in internal applications, cloud, or third parties. And you have to continuously monitor this life cycle and tie yourself. tandem. So you flow in tandem with every small change in data processing, and therefore you can reason about its second order, third order, fourth order effects. And for Reliance, that is what we have done with data journeys. Is once you reason about it from this principles and realize that AI is going to change the behavior, then you really think about reasoning about data security, data posture from a business process standpoint, and then continuously monitoring it, which is what needs to happen in the industry and which is what we're doing at Reliance.
Got it. Understood. One point you mentioned there, the whole trust piece. What do you mean by that trust piece there? The trust in sort of DSPM and specifically, obviously, when the whole AI picture is involved.
Yeah, I think the best way to understand this is a lot of people quantify trust in many different ways. And instead of giving you some philosophical notion of trust, I'm going to put it up in a simple mathematical equation. Trust is security multiplied by privacy multiplied by governance. So it's trust equal to security into privacy into governance. And if any piece of that equation is zero, the whole equation is zero. What's 100 multiplied by zero? It's zero. What's one multiplied by zero? It's zero. And I think that's the piece that uh, is really important when it comes to the next generation or forward-looking DSPM. The role that trust plays in DSPM now is that DSPM has to factor in the requirements and jobs to be done across all these three dimensions: security, privacy, and in privacy, I'm embedding compliance and regulations, and governance. And it has to distill the multiplication of all of these things because if you miss any other piece, you still have a problem. And that's the reality. It's a harder problem, it's more painful, but that's the reality of it. A lot of people confuse this to be when they start implementing programs or adopt tools, as they think trust is security plus privacy plus governance. And it's not plus, it's multiplication. And that's what's happening, especially when AI is involved in your business processes.
The trust equation. Love that. You should maybe trademark it and bring that through. And I was going to ask you on this then. So is it a case of, from your perspective, the industry is very receptive to this type of work? Is it like a, we know we've got this problem, we're just not too sure how to solve it? Or is it a kind of like a, we don't really think this is a problem, we're okay, we've got old school methodologies here?
No, I think the industry is starting to understand that they have to rethink this stuff. I think where, if I were to bucket the maturity of the industry, is they all know that they need to do something about it, but the rate of change in AI and its ramifications is so fast that the traditional thinking is not able to catch up. So I would say that there isn't consensus yet, but there's a lot of conversations that we have to deal with this problem of data and AI governance and posture management in a way that we have never done before. How best to solve for it? I think it's still a debate or it's still a uh, conversation that is happening amongst practitioners. I wouldn't say that there is a clear answer in the industry or agreed upon method just yet, but we are getting close to people fundamentally realizing it. Our point of view from Reliance's standpoint is that if you the invariant, the fundamental thing that will not change, regardless of AI or complete AGI, is an invariant. And that invariant, which is, let's call it a first axiom or principle, is that no matter how you slice and dice it, your way of solving good data security boils down to two things. We call it your circle of visibility and circle of obligations. And at the end of the day, you're basically trying to balance these two aspects: your controls, your obligations, your commitments to your customers, regulations, laws, compliance, and just good data hygiene with having maximum visibility in order to comply with those things. And if you reason from there, you end up realizing that the only way to solve for it, not as a matter of opinion, but as a matter of a law of physics, is you have to have visibility across all data journeys. Without that, you can't solve these pieces at all. And I think that's where people are some or the other way coming to that conclusion. A lot of data security teams will start to call it data loss prevention. But data loss prevention also only talks about when the data is going outside of your network or control at the last endpoint. But at that point, there might be multiple flows where it's okay for it to go out versus not go out in certain scenarios. But the only way you can reason about good from bad flows is if you know the entire journey. And that's where I think people are quickly going to finally realize that we need strong data lineage that we have mostly ignored in the past in the industry.
And this isn't just for people with stacks of healthcare information. This is
This is
any
everybody. This
any
is pretty
business.
much everybody that has customer data, personal data, because at the end of the day, I think people are starting to realize that if all AI models, well, currently, when we use AI, the term AI, we specifically mean generative AI and we specifically mean transformer-based models. Now, there is no inherent proprietary secret in transformer-based models. If I gave you $100 billion today, you could start a foundation model company and start competing with Anthropic and OpenAI. It will be hard, but like it's doable. So if transformer architecture and money for compute over a long period of time becomes commodity, then what's unique? It's basically your proprietary data set that you have because of the specific business you're in and the specific insights. Now, everybody wants to protect that, but in order to leverage those insights to accelerate your business, you need to put AI into it. But inherently, that poses risk because it's non-deterministic and it's a little bit of a black box. So what do? You monitor all of your data journeys and you have to consistently have an X-ray to figure out what's going on. And so you can then reason and put appropriate controls. Because what ends up happening is we're in that classic phase, which is, you're a sportsman, you hurt yourself on the field, you have a ton of pain in your foot and people are like trying to look from the outside at the swelling, at your motion, where it hurts, how it hurts, and making deductions. But until you get an X-ray or a CT scan, you have no idea that your bones broken in these two specific areas, and you can't reason about that until you have data journeys.
That's another great analogy to use. I'm going to start pinching some of these if that's okay. But well, thank you for running through all those. I know we've you've gone around a little bit there. And I think there's plenty of useful, I guess, insights, if nothing else, in there to take from. What are you looking forward to the next year or so?
Yeah, I think for us at Reliance, we're looking forward to basically two main things. One, we're super excited about launching our AI governance product, which is coming out next quarter, which is a 360-degree holistic visibility, governance, and protection for your AI footprint, whether it's third party or first party. And then I think that the part that I'm most excited about a little bit further ahead in the next 1 year is Reliance being able to actually provide that single pane of glass to reason about this trust equation we talked about, which is can you query your data layer for all concerns, no matter if the concerns or questions are privacy regulations or compliance, data security, AI governance, or in general, the GRC perspective. Because when you can see visual data journeys across your entire stack, you can then query to understand your trust posture from every dimension. And we're very close to being able to expose that as a natural language interface to our customers. So I'm super excited about that.
That sounds awesome, man. Well, there's you're hiring all over the place, funding new products. It sounds like a really exciting time. So I know you're busy. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll chuck a bunch of links and everything in the show notes if anyone wants to get in touch. And yeah, again, really appreciate your time. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you so much, James. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Abhi.